Alright, next up is Zerkis in an asteroid field.
How lovely.
What's on your mind? Come on, let's hear it.
I am feeling a bit responsible for all of this. Perhaps it is
Oh
because
no.
of me that the dimensions are falling apart.
I mean, it is
Ratchet
partially
and
true,
I
but
are
it's not
lost.
much use, thinking about it
Oh,
now.
yeah.
I will say, I do
Your
feel like the
communicator
plot's a little
got to be
contrived
fixed, so
for
that's
Clank. Mind
good.
you, Clank of all people being the
Right.
one of the two who actually fixes the
Okay,
Dimensionator and
I forgot
everything
if I
after
mentioned
they've
it
established
before.
how dangerous it
Well, to
is.
be fair, it was the tease that was at the end of Into the Nexus, so it's kind of like what happens with Sly, we're just following what the previous game established. But I forgot if I
That is
mentioned,
true.
So,
Mhm.
one
this is
of
Zerky's
the
Gastronomic Metroplex.
early
Does anyone in
installment
the
of
universe
the
would like to
plot
introduce you?
was
It's
supposed to
here.
have, you guessed it, Ratchet and Clank having
All right.
retired once
The
again,
destruction of the
and
dimensionator.
Yeah,
the
oh
initial
god.
parade was supposed to be,
Dimensional
the
cataclysm. If
first
I
time
cannot
that
find
they have
Ratchet,
done something together in
Don't
a
worry,
long
Bugs.
time.
I'll get
There
you
are
fixed.
a few lines in
Promise.
the final script that still reference that. Um, and probably the sense of guilt that Clank had probably would have made more sense with that thing in mind. To me, it was a good call that he changed that because, well, all of us made no secret that the whole Ratchet and Clank retiring was probably never good as a plot point, no matter how they tried to spin it. So, it was better to just
As
have
much
the
as
angle of Ratchet just thinking they were washed up.
we respect him, I have to ask, was that from when TJ Fixman was originally on board? Because look,
No,
I love
remember,
the man, he was a good
TJ
writer.
Fixman was never contracted to write the script.
Oh, it's weird because Ratchet and Clank retiring, that was TJ Fixman's MO, which, don't get me wrong, he was a good writer for Ratchet
Again,
and Clank,
potentially
but
just
he could
following
be
what
such.
was happening after Into the Nexus. I'll get to part, at the very least, of the writing process later. For now, we just need to
I
get to
will agree.
Xerxes. Gone.
I will agree, I'm glad they didn't do that again, though, because, look, I think at some point they even turned it into a running joke. Doing it again, especially after years of fans waiting and, having that be played straight, I think that would have just been tone deaf, especially since Into the Nexus was supposed to be about them committing to the game. Not only because the universe needed them, but because Tywin needed them because of what happened to Kronk and Zephyr and all that.
Oh, now, by
Shoot,
the
I
way,
wonder, are
I'm
we
just
good?
streamlining a bit this because normally I was supposed to actually use the anti-gravitational pad in order to get the bolt, but I
Wait.
could just use that. Also, look at that, more recycled assets. I mean, blanks.
Also, she died even though technically she was on a
Contra
platform.
syndrome, Drova. Nothing more than that.
Yeah.
It's not the one you were supposed to land on, so therefore you died.
Alright, new weapon, the lightning rod.
This is also now a good time for me to say that, yeah, Courtney Taylor here has been in a lot of things, not just movies, but video games as well, which we did talk about some, but that doesn't even cover a good chunk. Believe it or not, up until, like, the remakes, she was Ada Wong in Resident Evil for stuff like Resident Evil 6 and, of course, the CGI movies. She was Wonder Woman in the Justice League video game of 2006. She was, get this, Shriek in Spider Man 3, specifically the PS2 version. Yes, for those who don't know, you know that villainess who
Excuse
was
me.
Carnage's love interest? Yeah, the movies actually had a video game based which made her a villain. Go figure. She was Madame Mask in the Iron Man video game.
Yeah, the one we
She
commented
was
on.
Summervox. She was Summervox in the Minerva Leader in the Incredible Hulk game. She was Elite Commander Destaya in Supreme Commander. She was Tigra in Night Watch. She was Rosa in Ben Drown. She plays
She's a
Jack.
judge of the American Idol.
Yeah, she plays Jack, Kalara, Lilith, and the Eclipse enemies in Mass Effect 2.
The video game, I
N3.
should say. Not the song.
N3, Jack is one of the recurring characters. Anyway, One policy for Zerk is no weapons allowed. The receptionist will take care of all of them, which is not an excuse to have them all in display right there and then.
And also all your weapons.
I know it's not him, but this guy sounds like Anthony Del Rio.
Thanks for coming to Zerk, where we slaughter.
Yeah, I hear it. Who is his actual actor?
I don't remember. It's just, you know, the receptionist. Also, if you have a keen eye, the pirates here, the arcade we're playing, is the boss in the ice level of All for One.
Holy cow.
How did we got arcade cabinets, you know, from the regular universe? Because those are the ones from my blaster rounds hot from A Crank in Time. But I can just excuse to say, oh, they fall into a, you know, dimensional vortex and they got used here, you know.
I love to imagine people are like, oh, what's this? Something falling in from another dimension? Alright, it's going in the shop.
So
Capitalism be just that powerful.
You might not find a deeper hive of Ratchet, Scum, and Villainy or something crazy like that. But more importantly, this is where basically the Resistance has its meetings, and you can do a couple of things here, including, of course, the arena. In fact, you're gonna get a bit of a tutorial on how to do it via story reasons.
So yes, Clank exposits, this universe is even more unstable than our home one.
I don't know, Clank. I think almost every galaxy had multiple arena. Oh, that's a peculiar ship. I wonder who that could be. So yeah, Mr. Zirkle in this dimension became a pacifist and a bartender.
Oh god, did the divorce really hurt him that much?
So yeah, the equivalent of Rusty Pete in this version not only is more boisterous, he's also French.
Give me the part.
I love Rivet's face. She absolutely has none of his shit.
Rusty Pete?
Rusty? Mon Dieu. Your friend has a
He has a bit of a Steve Bonnet kind of thing going on, where he talks a lot, but he's kind of a coward.
extraordinaire.
So I guess in this version he's actually the leader of the pirates.
No equivalent to Captain's Leg. Fair enough.
God. You know it's ironic when Mr. Zircon is telling you not to be
The
violent.
infobot of this place will actually tell you why he's like this. How kind of you, Pierre.
Ready to kick some robo butt?
I have many issues with that question.
Yeah, that's mildly potentially technophobic, Rivet. Like, don't say that in front of Clank at the very least.
That being said, Clank sure took his time actually taking issue, because remember, in most of these games, he is just fine to destroy other robots. I mean, occasionally he apologizes, but there's like little to no hesitation from that man.
Well, he did not say, you know, that he opposed to what Rivet is about to do anyway, so... God damn it.
So this
Well, is it just one of those cases where, you know, I'm okay with destroying my brethren, I just don't like to actually talk about the term.
I guess so.
causing any trouble, but knowing him, I doubt we would be so.
Alright, the arena works pretty much the same way it did previously. You have the different bronze, silver, and gold cups, each of them with specific challenges. Well, the exception is that you need to complete all of them before the last one, before you can proceed, and they get unlocked doing specific story sections, basically. Compared to the previous games, I'm gonna show all of them, because they do not take that much time, and they usually are a good time.
Let me guess, defeat Pierre's crew, then beat Pierre as a boss, right?
Pretty much.
Mr. Zircon doesn't approve of violence, but he's okay with his son foreseeing the carnage.
I know he said the pain, but the way he yelled it made it sound like he was shouting, "The pain!"
You know what's the best part? According to the infobot, they're doing all of this as just, you know, a gig to get money to send Junior to school.
Oh, now I see it.
Oh, nice.
Let me guess. Mr. Zircon and Miss Zircon of this universe had a one-night stand. Junior became a thing, so he spends some time with his father, sometimes with his mother while she's hosting the shop, since he's the one who gives info about each weapon that
you will have
she
to wait
sells.
until we get the infobot.
Okay.
Alright, in the meantime, let me check who Pierre, as a reminder, who Pierre is voiced by, because it's been a while since I looked up his VA.
But yeah, in typical Ratchet and Clank session, we have an arena, basically.
Yeah, again, it's fairly simple, but they try to put a bit more spectacle, including how you just get dropping, Rivet gets dropping to it.
Yeah, complete with a superhero landing and everything. I do like how they pretty much use it all to boast that, yep, you now get seamless cutscenes, you can have whatever costumes you want on, and it'll reflect the whole story.
I mean, I'm fine with that because, like I said, the game does not tends to use this just so for the case of having a bit more flair without having to waste your time. Again, if it was a case of wanting to add the section where the character has to slowly get to a location or shimmy through, you know, a narrow path, I will have a bit more issue to that, but, you know, and again, this game respects the kind of pace that the franchise tends to have. Anyway...
Basically, unlike Metal Gear Solid 4, there's not a cutscene that goes so long that Twitch thinks you're streaming a movie and nearly bans you for it.
At the very least, that was an actual cutscene. I'm talking, like I said, about more what the modern Sony games tend to do, where they try to be quote-unquote more immersive, but all they do is just basically waste your time.
Fair point.
Anyway, Pierre is voiced by Raphael Petardi. Like, what a name. Who... yeah, there you go. Who has been doing stuff since the early 2000s. Apparently, I think, yeah, he's Canadian-American. Oh god, he was in Beverly Hills, Chihuahua.
Oh, there's a name I have not heard in a while.
Okay, it's done also... Oh, he was in one episode character for the Lion Guard, so there's that too. And other than this game, he voiced mostly characters in Call of Duty and more recently Starfield. So, again, the idea is just, you know, grinding his bones in order to, you know, build up a bit of a career.
It seems like for the most part, this game seems to have a good mix of old and new actors.
Yes. Again, I'm just surprised when they got Jennifer Hale for Rivet, mostly because, like I said, I probably thought we were gonna get someone relatively new. You know, that not necessarily not had a lot of experience, but fresh blood potentially, rather than an established VA. But again, I'm not complaining. I'm just curious about the thought process.
Also, Tia, for your delight, Courtney Taylor was also in Marvel's Midnight Suns as Agatha Harkness.
Yeah, I remember her voice too. What I'm more confused about is the fact that they got her to do the sassy black woman accent, where, well, I argue she does not look the part.
Oh, you mean in this game?
Well, yeah.
It's... okay.
Like, for Sony, and again, I only say this because Sony tries these days to be, you know, more akin to what actors and voice actors they choose for each role more than anything. So this just feels a random thing they will let pass.
Yes, the black scent, as some people call it. It's... It's weird and awkward. I don't want to say it's automatically racist, because sometimes it works, like when Troy Baker played...
I can tell that if it was really that much of a problem, someone would have complained by this point.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh,
it's
of course. Yeah, sure, buddy. Whatever you say.
Coward.
Oh.
Huh.
Hi, Francois.
Stunt double, huh?
Again, get used to not necessarily Francois himself, but the pirate enforcer, you know, mini-boss, to be repeated also a couple of times.
I know we technically never fought Rusty Pete directly,
No.
but it is a bit of a cop-out, sadly.
It's mostly because the game wants to build Pierre as an actual supporting character rather than a proper villain. It's more of a case where the pirates in this dimension, the pirates are more of a neutral figure that for now are not opposing the Emperor, as long as they're allowed to do whatever the fuck they want. But this is a story about clearly rising up against the oppressor, so, you know, by the end they will become allied to the resistance. I know, spoiler, but still.
Do they even mention if something happened to this universe equivalent of Captain Slag, or
No.
does the game just assume
okay.
Rusty Pete
No.
was always leader of the pirates?
Rusty
because-
Pete is not technically the ultimate leader, he's just the leader of his gang, and he's answering to someone else. when we will meet in a later part. That one is kind of equivalent to Captain's Leg, but there is no actual direct equivalent to him.
This is one thing that I do find a bit iffy with this game at times, about how I do feel like sometimes this game goes for more broader
cowards,
strokes than...
A defeat? But how? Eventually and dramatically, I will get my revenge. But here, take your back.
It'd be funny if he just dropped it off the edge and she had to run down and fetch it.
Alright, time
But,
to fix up Clank.
Ooh,
Yeah, I know. Rivet's face says it all.
Eureka!
Please don't make this weird.
Ratchet, can you hear me? Ratchet, can you hear me?
How long have you been flying around on your own?
Lombax take you
I am fine. In fact, I am with the Lombax now.
Hey, I'm Rivet.
What?
Hi. Wow, this is...
Oh, wait, okay. I have to tell you something. Dr. Nefarious just crowned himself Emperor of this dimension.
He did what? No. I've got my hands full with my own Nefarious.
That's the thing.
We've got to get him and us out of here, but...
Without the Dimensionator...
I think we have to build a new one. I met a prophet from Savali named Gary. He would know what to do.
Of course.
I'm only a few sectors away
I'm
from
sure
there.
with
I can
2
check it out.
Dimensionators, the universe will be perfectly
Well,
fine.
the previous one is completely broken, so, it cannot be salvaged anymore.
We can locate the phase quartz used to power the Dimensionator there.
The plot twist is that that planet is actually just a global fashion world.
I don't know if you noticed, there was something in the background that we will be giving more attention in a second.
Wow. Another Lombax.
Okay,
It must be destiny.
I'll say more about this later. Well, shit. Looks like
Oh dear.
the Emperor's assistant tended to eavesdrop a bit, but I'm sure it's not gonna be too much of a problem. For the time being, this is where the plot branches a bit, because, again, both Ratchet and Rivet are salvaging components for the Dimensionator in order to assemble it. So, the next couple of planets will be dedicated to what the respective Lombax are doing, basically.
Like I said, I'm enjoying this game overall so much. If I were to nitpick, though, I do feel like one issue it does seem to have is, like, it feels like it plays a little fast and loose with continuity. Again, like, it feels like someone's going off of, like, a quick peek at stuff. Like, yeah, Rusty Pete's the one we focus on more. He didn't have a boss, so, again, and mind you, like you said, they do technically give his counterpart a boss, but it's more so a counterpart to, like, another boss we see in the original Dimension as opposed to Captain Slag, which... again, feels a bit weird. It's like if, say, in, like, a Sonic Rush venture, instead of making a counterpart to Eggman, instead they made a counterpart to Sniffly. Just because, like, I don't know, Sad AM had been going on at the time or whatnot.
Wasn't there one of the Kirby games who had Escargoon show up just for one of the mini-games in the multiplayer mode?
God, I forget which one that is, but I think you're right. Also... again, I love how Rivet's dimension is a-okay with these dimensional holes to the point where it's even part of one of the arena challenges. It's like,
To be fair,
oh, shoot.
for sport, yes, absolutely. Gonna even make a quick profit out of it.
What's
Also,
that? Tears in our reality? Well, we gotta make sure how to franchise this, fellas.
Also, there's also the... that is, what I would say is also more of an nitpick, admittedly. But there's also the weird factor of, if you remember, both Captain Slag and Rusty Pete were part of a robots that were built in Ratchet's Dimension for the purpose, by Tachyon, for the purpose of exterminating the Lombax, using their own technology. So they had a specific reason to be built, but again, spoiler alert, it's not really such the case here. The Power 8 robots are just a thing, in this universe. And yes, again, you can make the argument that quantum causality had, just characters who resembled other without having the same circumstances that led to their creation. But I argue it would have been far easier to have counterparts to other characters that did not add such a very specific backstory, i.e. Tailwind. Again, cool circling around that. But again, like there's a cynical part of me that ponders if one of the reasons why I did not wanted to focus that much on Tailwind is because she might have, distracted out of the screen time of Rivet herself. Because remember, she was all over the marketing and also on the cover and playable for a lot of the game, even though, again, to be nitpicky, she's not in the title of the game. This is still supposed to be a Ratchet game, theoretically, at the end of the day.
And I definitely remember the mass speculation that they were potentially setting her up as yet another love interest for Ratchet too.
Well, yes, and technically no. I was more speculating about this being yet another passage of the torch kind of game, where at the end Ratchet would have been either killed or properly retired for good and let Rivet finish the job. Thankfully it's not the case, but I still have to ponder if earlier versions of the script might have led to that. Again, the idea also of Ratchet and Clank, having supposedly retired at the beginning in one of the earlier drafts, makes me wonder if, that was one of the directions they were going to take. And again, it was really the big trend around this time that Cars 3 kind of started.
I'm gonna wait and see how this thing ends. I will just say this, though. I do get it. First and foremost, this is a game, and they probably just wanted to focus on, ooh, looky, it's different versions of all the characters. I do feel, though, that I always kind of tilt my head whenever somebody does an alternate dimension thing in kind of just the most stock way, like, oh, look, it's just this or that, without really going into the idea of, okay, but how would this actually work in this different dimension? It's like, I feel like the signs of a great written what if is if you really do actually take a moment to stop and think of every step and whatnot, as opposed to just, oh, this would be opposite, this would be flipped and all that. No, I feel like, again, if you're implying that the pirates are a thing here, then does that mean that there's an equivalent of Percival
here? It's an undead Grunford lives, yes. This is also partially important because story-wise, we will meet an obligatory match against an undead Gruntor later in the game. And Clank will react to that, and it's kind of weird because it's the one time that the game does not have foresight. Because you would think of it if that encounter will have Clank act like if it's the first undead Grunfor that he ever meets. But I kind of wish that there was a slightly different line of dialogue that refers to the fact that, no, in case he has already done this match in the arena, he would have already met one. But alas, what can you do?
That does feel weird. Insomniac seem like the kind of studio who would take that into consideration, usually.
It's towards the end of the game, and I'm pretty confident that the part was also rushed for this one. So, as usual, it's tradition at this point. So.
Just like with the 2016 game.
Or even all the others, like Into the Nexus,
I feel like Into the Nexus kind of had issues across the whole game, but fair point enough, it does kind of boil down more so close to the end. Although, I really do wonder if it was always the plan to only fight the one twin and not both.
Well, that's not what mostly I was referencing. Again, in general, you can kind of tell that a lot of the games of the franchise, even in general, not even just tied to this franchise, in general, they tend to be having the final part being the one that's more rushed or anything. But again, that's just a thing in development. Only a couple of studios decide to, either start from the end and then build back from the beginning, or have a complete, development cycle without too many problems, even towards its final part.
I will say this, though, one interesting new era they could make off of this is an era of Ratchet & Clank games where, instead of spending time in a different galaxy, each game maybe involves us having to travel back and forth between different dimensions, universes, and what-ifery and whatnot. Right now, this is based...
just to mention, this is a Krager bear. These are collectibles that are not marked on your map, even with the map-o-matic that you will get later on, nor are they counted. They're only there just to get you an achievement, and they are dedicated to a member of the dev team called Craig, I forgot his last name, who passed away during development, similar to Dan Johnson. This studio is kinda cursed.
Yeah.
Go on.
But yeah, no, I could see us getting a new era where each game is about going to a different dimension where, say, what if happened? Like, maybe this game is like, just a little test, and that's why they don't go into as many depths or levels as to how much stuff changes. Like, who knows, maybe we could get a dimension where Ratchet and Clank are the bad guys, or, I don't know, maybe we could get one where the Lombax is never left, and
Anyway,
so on and
well,
so forth.
for the latter, it's a bit more complicated. For the time being, new weapon, the Drill Hound.
The Drill Hound, our finest breed of weapon. Pull the fire trigger halfway to lock this burrowing or durable rocket launcher onto your filthy target. Pull it fully to load.
So yeah, the Drill Hound works as a rocket launcher that burrows itself under the ground and then jumps onto the enemy. It's good enough for land and slightly airborne look, but those that actually fly a bit too high are a bit, harder to reach with this weapon. Thankfully, later on you will get a proper rocket launcher.
So it digs into the ground and uses the power of momentum to shoot itself at enemies, basically.
Yes.
Science. Okay.
I mean, yeah, as long as... to quote Fist of the North Star, yeah, as long as it works. God damn it. I'm trying to buy things here.
Return of the rude NPC.
It's like Lightning Returns all over again.
You're hearing this.
Did he? Just give us some space. Jesus.
Why are you even coming up all this way, dude?
Before moving on, you get to have a side quest back on Sargasso. You can technically do that at any point. There's no, point of no return for finishing this quest outside of, doing the final boss, obviously. So it's not like if you wait a specific plot point, you risk to lose access to the side quest, so don't worry. You can 100% this game at any point before the end. If anything, it's actually one of the games that you can 100% even before having to do challenge mode. Also, Agents of Doom, cute.
So, in terms of completion, how player-friendly is this game with, cluing in players that, they need to get a certain hidden something from a level and whatnot?
Oh, pretty much, spot on, technically. Again, outside of a map-o-matic that you will get later on, you can also set up markers on both current and side objectives if you want. Move on. And 2 parts from now, you will also get a tool for traversing places in a faster pace if you want, that replaces effectively your run button. So, again,
nice.
The game doesn't want to waste your time, that's what I keep saying.
It really,
right,
it really just...
Before moving on, quick message from Dr. Nefarious.
I know I've been away for
Please don't flash your crotch at me, sir.
We should catch up.
Because when you think about it, he's technically naked.
See, the still images still having the proper red eyes with the right enlargement. What happened to the model?
I don't know. Unless whoever was making these cutscenes didn't get intel from whoever was making the in-game cutscenes.
Probably.
Well, as we all know, money is what makes the world go round in this game series, so yeah.
It is also mostly an excuse to justify why the enemies know there are enemies right there to wait for you.
Just know that I'm going to crush you into dust, and then I'll blast that dust into a sun, and then I'll...
Well, he's efficient.
Great. Now I'm on 2 nefarious hit lists.
Alright, before moving on, let's go back to Sargasso in order to actually help with the Morts with their problems.
haven't forgotten about you, Trudy.
Because, damn whatever hit list we're on, we help the needy where we can.
And to be fair, I think Rivet was mentioned a couple of times, but, you know, the Mort are basically her family, so, you know, I can understand.
So it makes me feel like Sargasso is supposed to be this realm's equivalent to Veldin, at least in regards to importance
In
to our
relation,
protagonist.
yes.
You feel the need to flip out every time you land like that.
Yes, let's go to see what is up with Trudy. Yeah, whatever.
What's the matter with Trudy?
Oh, hey there, Rivet. Oh, she's just hungry for Zerbstones. Normally she nabs them from those rock islands up there, but I guess she's too tired to fly today.
Basically, this acts as your farming planet. You know, in this case, you need to get Zerbstones to feed to the Trudy the Dragon.
And let me guess, you feed her stuff and she poops out rewards for you.
No, she's not Yoshi. Sorry.
Oh.
Don't worry. The reward is basically what is in the container that the Morts will give to you. You will see. There's also a bit of a better kind of reward later on, but you'll be able to see.
I'll admit, part of me was kind of thinking about how the Doolittle movie ends. I will refrain from spoilers if you want to stay fresh on Robert Downey Jr.'s. Well, do you know how it actually ends, though?
I don't remember if there's more to it, but to be honest, I don't care.
Okay, basically the main climax of Robert Downey Jr.'s magnum opus Doolittle culminates in a dragon who has lost most of her species having flatulence issues.
Yes, that was in the trailer.
But it's how it gets solved that's insane.
Yeah, he stuck a hand up its ass. Again, was in the trailer. So.
Wait, that was in the trailers?
Alright,
Huh.
You need to actually get her more Zerbstones, technically, but don't worry, they're relatively easy to find, and they're marked on your map anyway. Well, for now I'm just gonna, similar to the other farming spots, I'm gonna cut only to the more interesting bits, but apparently also the Talks for Less are trying to collect the Zerbstones, weirdly enough.
Again, I know we're in a different universe, it's not our own, but damn it, the pay is...
I keep forgetting the name.
Alright, Gooners, we're gonna get them, alright. They may be in a dimension that's not our own, but damn it, the pay is too good.
There you go. Basically, this reward is another piece of armor, just from a different set.
I do like that little touch that as soon as you basically fulfill a requirement, you get a call from the intercom that they've got a reward
just
for
in a
you.
case to, you know, making sure, in case you did not check your completion. That I actually am more okay with it, because, you know, it's just taking the obvious, but it still helps you, you know, on that front, and just, you know, when they tell you immediately the solution to a puzzle.
How long have you known Mort?
Since I was a kid. They're, you know, a little odd, but they're one of the good ones.
What do you mean by that, Rivet?
Rivet?
What do you mean by that?
They're the good ones. Rivets. Maybe we need to talk about your upbringing a bit. Oh god, Rivet is Ratchet if he was racist. That was the true what if.
So yeah, your third reward is the spy bot if you get all of the Zerbstone remaining on Sargasso, but Trudy is now in good shape enough to actually give you a boost. So you can actually ride on the dragon similar to how you did in you know, in the intro where Ratchet was kind of around. Unfortunately, I have to say, from the people who actually made the Spyro games, this is a fucking downgrade, because the turning weights a fuck ton. You need to use the right analog stick to steer away the direction where Trudy is going, and she's not stopping. You can only stop by having the brake with L2. Again, controlling this thing is a fucking mess, and it's a shame, because again, these are the people who made Spyro. They did perfect the the flying controls, even by the first game, technically, thanks to, you know, the bonus courses and the nasty's loot, you know, final round. What happened here?
Wow,
It's
so
weird.
Jova,
Yes.
the main character whose name starts with an R is being racist. Somehow, I don't think racist in Clank is going to be tearing up the sales charts.
Now, if it's called Racist and Clink, maybe.
Sure.
Racist and Clink, yeah. The racist is in the Clink for, well, being racist.
Exactly. But yeah, no, it is weird since, you know, a lot of Spyro's flying can be more so counted as basically gliding with style, but it is a bit weird. I'm guessing maybe the idea was they didn't want to make Trudy feel too easy or something, I guess.
For later
but...
sections, it controls better when you're supposed to actually perform actions similar in a proper dogfighting kind of mode. But for free roaming right on Sargasso, it doesn't really work as intended, if I have to be honest. So
It's weird because she can actually properly fly for the most part, whereas Spyro mostly glided. But
like I said,
still.
I'm trying to think of a section that did allow Spyro to properly fly. Again, the bonus courses, you know, the circuits, they're called, and usually the final words, which actually give you an excuse to do it, the nasty loot, and the bonus realm from the preferred game.
Fair point.
Also, even the simple act of actually having, you know, Trudy land on one of the, you know, nest that allows you to get on a checkpoint, also another Krieger Bear, is a bit difficult because you need to be in a decent enough range to the actual spot, and then you need to keep to press and hold the circle button until Trudy properly, you know, lands on it. It's actually very weird in how it's performed, if I have to be honest.
I mean, maybe their excuse is, oh, Trudy starts off a little bit groggy after she wakes up, and as the game progresses, she locks in better.
Well, close enough, because when you're actually almost done with the Zergstones, Trudy gains the ability to shoot fireballs, as you can see, which allows you to collect the remaining ones, because they're in locations that otherwise will be inaccessible.
Methinks Trudy was meant to be a Spyro reference.
Although she's a bit chunky to be properly a Spyro reference. Also, to be nitpicky, she's technically a wyvern because she only has 2 rear legs and a pair of wings instead of 4 legs.
But Tio, those are the same thing!
No, they're not. Simple as.
Although, okay, in regards to the more chunky appearance, well, then I guess she's akin to Spyro in the Legend of Spyro series, where he gets to actually grow up a bit.
Sure, the same franchise that gives us handsome, you know, Hunter for some reason.
Oh, Lord Hunter's face in that one is...
Also,
yes, he's handsome, but it's just uncanny as a result.
It's also hilarious considering how depressing... How depressing the ending of the third game actually is. Yeah, I just cut in post to actually get back there.
I like the implication that killed Trudy.
Alright, so let's get to the info about...
How long will it take Trudy to eat everything?
Oh, 5 days, 6 tops. But more to worry about next week. Well, hey there, Rivet. How you going?
Hey, fair enough.
That was a riveting conversation.
Ha, riveting. There you go. Some of the Gold Bolt also gives you potentially the RPG mode on, as in it showcases the damage that you're doing to the enemies, similar to Castlevania Symphony of the Night. But also, this potentially allows you to swap the skins also of the weapons, similar to how Tuzo Destruction did, meaning that theoretically you can have Rivet with the Omni Wrench and Ratchet with Rivet Smollett instead.
Interesting.
Also this.
So basically, the Emperor just took one look at this place and figured, nope, not worth my time.
Although apparently the Kerchus were exterminated in this dimension. God damn.
All for misnaming him on their tax returns. Jesus Christ.
I know that they were apparently a species that almost the entire galaxy was allergic to, but holy shit.
Is that why nobody mourned their loss?
Then Emperor Nefarious is like, can I slaughter them like animals?
Became a Dalek.
Oh, that was some.
No,
good
that
bit
was
of
Anakin
trivia.
with, remember? You know, he did it with the
Yeah, because you're saying exterminate.
Yeah, fair enough, but that was my bad. Alright, next part, if I recall correctly, we will go to Savali, so we will actually go back to what Ratchet is doing, where we properly meet Gary in person, believe it or not, and we will learn more about the truth behind the Lombaxes. So see you for that.
See you then.